Okay, guys. I hope I am audible as well as my screen is also visible. Let me know in the chat box. Fine. So, have you people gone through the recording for the last session? Yes, I'm going to start the recording. What about that I said you to go through the recording of the last session? Have you gone through it and gone through the code as well that I provided yesterday? So, how many people are able to understand the code, even for 50% uh, of the code? I'm talking about the code of session management that I provided yesterday. No, I'm not expecting Razan to understand the whole of the code in one go for you guys, but just if you're getting the sense what is happening in the code. We're going to discuss the code anyway today. Okay, so let's begin today with the code understanding, and we'll try to understand every part of the code how things work. But this will only be helpful if you have watched the lecture yesterday and you have at least tried to attempt the code. So uh, let me just run the application and show you again just for quickly, and then we will go to the code. So as we have seen yesterday that this is the index.html which is coming up because we have not provided the resource name, and by default index.html is picked up from the welcome file list. So let me provide the values, Shah Alam as the first name and the last name, and let me submit. So the hit goes to hello form servlet with the parameter Shah and first underscore name is equal to Shah and last underscore name is equal to Alam, right? So that means in the form, the name that you have given to the to field is, as you can see, is okay. That's uh, let me open the form index.html. The name of the two fields is first underscore name and last underscore name, as given in the input type. This tag. So the same name has to be used in the servlet as well to fetch the value of these two fields. And then what is happening over here is when uh, when there is a hit for the first time as this one, then a session id, this particular page as a response is returned back, and this particular page contains the information which is the session id that belongs to the http session object that is created for this particular request. That means for every request, every hit sent by different browsers or different computers, that will be getting a different session ID because for each of them, they are a different client, and so a different object of the HTTP session class would be generated for them. And for every generated object, the session ID is going to be unique. There is a creation time, and because there is no last access time, this is the first time we are assessing. There is no we have not assessed it as the last time because this is the first time only. So this creation time is also copied to the time of last access. Number of visits is equal to 1, and the form parameters Shah and Alam are being printed over here. So when I will press review session data and information, this particular button, then I will not expect this session ID to be changed, because this response is received from the server to this browser, the browser which is working in the ID, this small browser, internal browser of the Eclipse ID. And now it has to send this session ID back to the server to get himself recognized that he is the same client. And the information that is saved in the session object is Shah and Alam and number of visits that I have saved it manually. The other information, these three information, ID, creation time, and the time of last access, is something which has been generated and then saved. Uh, okay, so let's try to press the review session and data information, and you can see that the number of visits has increased to 2. The creation time and the last access time remains the same, because whatever is the creation time for the first hit, now in the second hit, that becomes the time of last access. So it again remains the same. Number of visits changes. First name is Shah and the last name is Alam. The session ID remains the same. This is the second request and response cycle which is complete, apart from the form information. Then this is the third request and response cycle. That is the third hit. You can see the number of visits is third. Now you can see the time of last access is changed, because the time of because the second time when you access the session object for the third time, that becomes the time of last access. Session ID remains the same again, rest of the information remains the same, and so on. It will keep on progressing until we press the log off button. If we press the log off button, then we have seen in the last class that the session gets terminated. And in the same browser also, if we try to run the same page again, we don't get the session ID is no more valid, and we don't get the information, the first name and the last name back. Rather, we get a complete new session ID, and with a new task creation and the time and the time of last access. Okay, so we will run that after once we have understood the code. We will try to log off and see what is happening over there. Okay, so let's go to the code directly. So index.html was the first form which was collecting the first name and the last name, and had a submit button that you press the submit, and the control comes to basically this servlet, hello form servlet. This is you will find the mapping in web.xml file for this hello form servlet. Now let's try to understand what's happening in the hello form servlet. Basically, I do not want you to focus on each bit of the code, but rather, as of now, just focus on this particular code. This highlighted code, as you can see, it has got if and else condition. The first if condition says if session is new. When the session is going to be new, please type in the chat box. When we can say that the session is new. Chandra says when a new person has login. In fact, we are not logging. We are just providing the first name and the last name. So when a new user, rather you can say, whether it's a new person or a new browser open in the computer of the same person, when rather you can say when a first hit comes from a unique user. Okay, so when the first times a person tries to contact fill the forms and submit the forms, then the session that is created for him is going to be the new session, and the session ID will be provided back to the client, and then every time the client or the browser will come back with the same session. So he will no more be a new that session will no more be a new session, but rather that session will be picked up from the session object will be picked up from referring the session ID what the browser has provided. So the first if block is meant for only the condition when the session is new. That means when you fill the form and you press the submit button, and the form has and due to the submit button of the form, when you press it, the control has come to this particular hello form servlet, hello form .java this particular servlet. So in that case, this session is new, and when you press the review button, you see the review session data and info button. If let me show you the source code of this particular HTML, which has been dynamically generated by the server, and I mean the servlet, and sent back to the client. If you see the action, the form action, you see this form action is also hello form. This form action is also hello form, and the form action that was in the index.html file, that is also hello form. That means whether it's coming through the by pressing the submit button of this form that contains the first name and the last name, or whether it's coming after I press the review session data and info, both have the action at the same servlet. So in both the cases, the control is being sent to the same servlet, that is hello form.java, as the name of the class that is mapped to the servlet, right? So the controls come through this particular class in both the cases. So the first time is when we check if the session is new, and that is the case when we are coming through this index.html file. So in that case, basically we have to focus on this if condition. This if block will run, and in rest of the situation, every time when we press the button review session data and info, then this if the session is new is going to return false, because we have already got a session ID and there is an object available in the memory of the server which is mapped to this session ID. So this if block is going to be returned false, and the control will come to the else condition. So only in the first hit, when the control is coming from the form index.html, only in that condition this if block is going to execute. Otherwise, in every other conditions, when we press welcome review session data and info from this particular response page, every time the control is going to come to the else block. I hope this point is clear, right? Any doubts? Guys, is this okay? Please type in the chat box. Anush says repeat. Okay. See, Anuj, we have a if condition and the else condition. We know that either if will run or else will run. One of the condition will run at a time, right? So this hello form.java, this particular form, this particular servlet is included in the action of index.html as a URL pattern hello form, as well as the same servlet is included as the um, action of the response page that has received from the server, the same URL pattern helloform.java. So whether you are coming from index.html by filling the information of the first name and the last name, or whether you are every time pressing the review button and going to the server, and the server increments the number of visits, updates the things in the session object, and then sends back the control with this table information in the form of HTML page. In both the case, the same servlet is being hit. Now, in both the cases, when the same servlet is hit, we know that only in the first case, that is when the control comes from index.html, the new session object needs to be created, right? For a unique client. And in that case, uh, only uh, when the controls comes to this particular servlet or this Java class, this if block is going to be executed, because session dot is new method is the part of the session. We will see what the session variable is, but this is basically you can see the session is of the type HTTP session class. So I told you that the object is created of the type HTTP session class to hold the session information temporarily in the memory on the server side, right? So when you call is new method, that means HTTP session object has got is new method, and this method is returning a boolean value, either true or false. So when you have come from the form, so this session object has been created for the first time, so is new is going to return true. So this condition if will evaluate to this particular value will be replaced to, or this particular statement will be replaced to true at the execution time. And so when you come from the index.html for the first time from the form, then this if block is going to be executed. And from next time onwards, whenever you press review session data and information, so every time this if condition is going to fail, because now you are sending the session ID from the client, that is the browser, and the server is going to match it with the object, and the server is going to find the object which has been created in the previous request and response cycle. And so the session is new is going to return false. Okay, because you are not creating a new session, the same session ID is being used to pick up an old object. So in that case, this particular code is not going to run. In the rest of every cases, this else block is going to run every time. So you can assume that this if block is going to run only for the first time when you are sending the request through index.html, or you are communicating to the server by pressing the submit button of the index.html. Rest of the time, because you are coming through review session data and info to the same servlet, to the same class, then in that case what will happen, the the else block is going to take the control. So this if block is going to run just once for the first time, and then else block is going to take over for the rest of the time, every time that you want to review the session data. Okay, any other doubts? Okay for everyone? Okay, so let's move ahead. Now, to see how the code, progresses, rather we are going to not run this application, but rather we are going to debug this application so that we should be in a position to follow each and every line of code and how the code progresses. So in the first line of the code, which is after the curly brace of this do get method, I put a debug point, and the control where I will run this application in the debug mode, the control is going to come and stop over here, and then we can proceed line by line to understand what happens in different situations. Okay, so let me say log off, and I am logged off, and you can see that it gives me a message: thank you for visiting, you are logged off, Shah Alam. So this was for the previous communication. I want to close it. And then what I want to do is I want to now go for not the run as option, but the debug as option. And the way the Java applications are debugged by selecting the Java application option in the debug, we debug on the server by the debug on server option. So when the application is running in the JE mode, it's a web application, you will see this option. So I will go for this option, debug on server. And you see, when I say finish, it is asking me to switch the mode to the debug. I say okay. And this form has come, but we have not actually hit the servlet as of yet. This form has come, the index.html is open for us. As soon as we fill the information and press the submit button, you will see the URL being changed over here, and the control is sent to the container, which in turn submitted to the servlet, which is the hello form servlet. Okay, so let me say s dot a this time. Let me use a different value. Okay, and let me say submit. Uh, See, as soon as I have pressed the submit button, you can see in the browser that after submit button, it has not even it has actually moved to the hello form, the doGet method of hello form, but it has not actually updated here. But don't worry. So we are already into the hello form.java. Okay, so let's try to go line by line what is happening, and let's try to see the first line of this code says http session is equal to request.get session. Now I told you that if the http protocol itself doesn't have anything that says about how we are going to manage the session, but we have to do something extra. So the http session class has been provided. You can say that it's a specification by the JE people, and for a web application. And the http session class is the one whose object we are going to use to create the session. And you can see it's an interface. So that means the implementation is coming from the implementation is coming from servlet-api or file, that is the container, right? So we are going to create the session. Now if and the else block are the one which are going to run conditionally. As I told, that if block is going to run when the control is coming from the index.html. That is what we have done right now. And in next every cases, the else block is going to take the control if block will not run. Okay, but this line which is outside the if block, this is going to run every time, whether you are hitting for the first time or whether you are trying to review the session data and information by pressing the button of the response page. So that means is the object is going to be created every time? No, because we have not used a syntax like http session is equal to a new http session and then the constructor. No, we have not used that. Rather, we are asking the request object to provide us the session. Now this request object also contains, because this request object is coming from the client, which is the browser, this also contains the session ID. So as in the first case, when the hit is coming from index.html, the session has not yet been created, so the session ID is not there, it's missing. So what request.get session method is going to do is, it is going to serve us a dual purpose. And the first purpose, when it sees that the request object, the object on which this method is being called, the session ID is not available on this object, that is, the session ID is not coming with the request, then in that case the getSession method is going to construct a new session object, allocate it a session ID, and it's going to return it back to the caller. That means this line of the code. Okay, so in this case, when the hit has come from index.html for the first time, we can expect that getSession method is going to return me the object, which is a blank object, a new object, a blank HTTP session object, and we need to put the information inside that object. So this is the starting point that I want to wish my web application to know that I am going to start a session. I am taking control of the session management activity now. But next time onwards, when the hit comes through review session object and data information uh, button, when we press that button, so in that case, the control will come to this particular line of code again, and instead of creating a new session object, the same method, getSession method, is going to give me the old session object. So you can assume an if-else condition inside the getSession method as well, that if the session ID is not available in the request, then create a new HTTP session object and return it back the reference of that object to the caller. That means this line. Otherwise, in the else condition, uh, find out which session object has got the session ID and return that session object, the reference of that session object to the caller. That is this line. So you can assume an if-else condition in this method as well. It is going to serve you the dual purpose. Now, let me press Fn plus F6, and as we move further, you can see here the variables are there. You always have this variable because whenever you start executing a class, that this variable points to the running object, the code in which the code is running, for which the code is running, and then you have the request and the response object because this is a servlet in the doGet method is running, and the doGet method has a request and the response object. And now because the session object has just now created in the previous line, and this session object must be having an ID. See, it is also having a creation time. It is also having a creation time, but this is a very large value in the form of long value, and that's not in the format of a date and time. And you can see the session ID that ends with 6BBE. This is the session ID which has been created. So while you debug, you can get inside any object and try to figure out the structure of that object, what that object is containing. For example, if you go to the request object, you can see a lot of thing in the request object. You can see the attributes, the cookies, and there are lots of objects. In fact, uh, uh, let me show you. Parameter map is there, which contains all the parameters that you pass from the form, and so on. So you will get a lot of information. So you can dig into each and every object and every variable to figure out what is the value of that object and variable. So now we have got a new blank session created. That blank session has already been populated with the session ID, the creation time, and certain information which the server provides for you. The Tomcat server provides for you. Now, because we have seen the creation time as shown in the session object that was in the form of a long value, so we want to display the value in the form of a date and time format to the response page that we want to send after this servlet is executed. So we are getting that creation time by calling session.getCreationTime method, and we will get that long value. You can see the return type of this particular method, get creation time, is a long, and that is being converted, or rather passed, to the constructor of the date, and so that will be converted to a proper date format, and we can use this create time instead to refer for the next time onward, so that because this creation time is not going to change, the whatever the creation time is there for this particular session, this is going to remain there till the session expires, or it is garbage collected, or it is removed from the memory, whatever you say. And then date last access time, we call session.get last access time, and the last access time also, because there was no last access, this is the first time the session has been created, so the last access time is also going to be returned the same as the get creation time, as a default nature of the particular method. And that also we are converting to a date format, and the variable that we are using to store this value as in the date format as last access time. So creation time and the last access time. So let's move further. You can see the create time and the last access time variables are not available over here. As soon as I move further, Fn plus F6, you will see the create time has come. Okay, and as the last access time has also come, and you can see the value they hold is in the form of a date and date format. So both are holding the same value as of now. Okay, guys. Now, after that, we are creating a few values to hold the value which has come from the form, like first name. So we are using the camel case. Whereas in the form we have specified the same value in the input type as first underscore name and last underscore name. But here we are using the camel case, first name and the last name with N capital. Okay, so first name is null, last name is null, because we are trying to hit for the first time, so these are null values. And then title, we are initializing to some value, welcome back to my website. Okay, but this title will be taken into consideration only in the second hit, not in the first hit. You will see that in the if block we have changed the title to welcome to my website. Okay, so when the control comes for the first time in the if block, we have changed the the value to welcome to my website. Here you can see, instead of welcome back to my website. And in the rest of the cases, this will not be changed. So every time the control skips this if block and comes to the else, it will be initialized with the same value, welcome back to my website, from the next time onwards. So Fn plus F6, integer visit count is equal to new integer 1. Visit count we are putting as integer, so because this is the first time, so we are creating a variable with integer value, and we are setting it to 1. That is the first visit. And then there is a visit count key. Now guys, try to understand one thing. We need to put certain information in the session object that we have just now created, including the form information, that is the first name and the last name, as well as the visit count, the date, the create time, and the last access time, which we have converted into the date format from the long format the session already have. Now, these information we want to place into the session object which has been created for us by the container in the first visit, that is this particular visit. Now, the way we store the information in the session object is just like a map. That is, as in the map, you must, if you remember from the core Java classes, your collection classes, uh, the information is saved as key and a value pair. That means if I want to get a particular information, so when you call the get parameter method of the request object, you pass a name in the form of a string. You pass a name in the form of a string. That is the key. And then you get the actual name, say SHA, SHA, or simple S, whatever I have filled in the box. So that is the value. So you have a name given, which is the key, and then you have a value. The name is always in the form of a string, and the value could be either a string or object, whatever it could be, right? Similarly, the same pattern is followed over when we save the value in the session object. So to save any information, we also need a string representation or a name for it. So the value 1 that is held by the visit count variable, this value 1 is the actual value, but we give it a name in the form of a string, visit count. Okay, we give it a name as visit count in the form of a string. So whenever if we want to put this value into the session, we will use this name. And whenever we want to recollect or get back the same visit count value from the session object, we will tell the session object return me the visit count. We will pass this string value visit count, and it will give me the value which is hold in the variable visit count actually. So I hope you understand this key and value pair. This mechanism for storing a information inside a map or a session. Both are alike. The creation time, Rajdeep, is basically taken from the server. So the server on which the Tomcat is running actually. So whether it be a Windows server or it's a Unix-based server, whatever it is, whatever the operating system it takes the format. But whatever it is going to take in the long format itself. So this long format is something which has been made from the context of the API, not from taking consideration into any operating system. So let's move further. Fn plus F6. Now this is the first time we are coming, and we are coming through the form. That is after pressing the submit button of the form, which contains username and the password. So my if block should execute. That means session dot is new should return me a true value. So that, and if the control enters the if block, that means it has returned a true value. So let me press Fn plus F6, and yes, the control has entered to the if block. So the title has changed from welcome back to my website, which was earlier, to welcome to my website, because this is the first hit. Okay. And then we try to fetch out the parameter first underscore name and the last underscore name from the request, and you can see as soon as we fetch these values, here are the list of the variables. They still do not contain the first name and the last name. In fact, they contain, but they contain as a null value. They hold the null value. So as soon as we proceed further with the code fn plus f6, uh, request dot get parameter is executed. You see the first name has been populated with the value s, and the last name is still null. As we proceed further, this value is also populated with a. S and a are the two values that I have supplied. And now once we have received this value, we are going to push these values to the session object that has been created specifically for this particular client. Okay. So we are going to put these values, the first name and the last name, into the session object. So to save into the session object, we have to call the set attribute method of the session object, and to get back the value, we have to call the get attribute method of the session object. So we are putting these values by calling the set attribute method. And see, you are providing the key and the value. Key means a string name with which I will refer it for the next time when I want to get it back from the session object, and the value is actual value which is containing the first name and the last name, the values of it, like S and A. You can see the S and A are there, but the key are typically the string names which are used to refer further on. So let me say Fn plus F6. Okay, sorry, Fn plus F6, and again Fn plus F6. So I hope these two values, the first name and the last name, has been inserted into the session. And then what I have done, if you remember, in the response page we have welcome, and the username was welcome back to my website, or welcome to my website, and the username was printed as Shah Alam in the earlier case. So that was the concatenation of the two first name and the last name. So we have already concatenated or added those two values, and then we have saved it by the name username as well, so that I should not need not to repeat this system. Rather, I can just fetch this value from the session from the next time onwards to be used as it is. Okay. So let me go to the session object and try to figure out if these values are available somewhere or not. I will have to put, I think, a lot of effort to basically find out attributes. Okay, maybe they may be available in the attributes key set. if you just try to look at the attribute, see, when I highlighted this attribute, somewhere within the attribute these values are there. Username, which is the full name after the concatenation, this has come into the session object as s space a. The last name is a, the first name is s. So these three attributes has been inserted into the session object, that is uniquely meant, and that has been referred by the session id, this one, 6BBE, ending with 6BBE, this session ID, right? And now else block is not going to execute anyway. So let me press Fn plus F6. The whole else block has the whole else block has been skipped, as you can see. And now we are trying to set attribute visit count key as visit count. So visit count was 1 in this case. You can see it was 1 as initialized, and because this is the first visit, so we are adding this value 1 to the session object so that we can retrieve it the next time. And you can see in the else block, that is the block which is going to be entered from next time onwards. So the visit count is being incremented by 1. This particular line of code is after the if and the else block, so this is not in within any of the blocks. So this is anyways going to run whether you enter the if block or the else block. So if you have entered the if block, you have not incremented the value of the visit count over here. The visit count was initialized to 1 and that remains the same, and that has been inserted into the session object by the name visit count key. The visit count key is simply holding the string visit count, and the visit count value, the value is actually holding the value 1. From the next time onwards, visit count will be increased to 1, right? It will be increased to 1, and the new value will be put over here. Agree? Now, then we move further. In fact, this particular line was no more required outside the if block, because every time we revisit this particular class, this line is going to execute, unnecessarily wasting our CPU cycle, right? This line should be ideally be copied to the if block only, because this value should be created uh, uh, within the if block, but the variable has to be declared outside the if block, because we are using to set these things in the session object outside the if block. So the variable could be declared over here, but the assignment of the value should always as an integer value to visit count. This particular thing, this should be always be used inside it, the first if block, so that this is not this visit count is equal to new integer 1 every time it is being initialized as 1. But we never in the next case onward, next hit onwards, we are never utilizing this default value which has been assigned. Rather, we are always trying to pick it up from the session. Okay, you can see we are getting it from the session itself. So we will come in the next iteration, we will see, and this is no more being used. So this must be copied from this line should be copied, or rather cut from this particular position, and should be placed inside the if block, so that unnecessarily a new object of the type integer with the value 1 is creating every time the servlet is being visited. So these are the type of review comments that you will get when you review in a team meet, after you try to push your code into the repository, and before sending it to the merge of for the testing and the rest of the operations. uh, uh, so before sending it to the merge broad, people will conduct someone from your peer, that is your from your coding team, and someone from your managerial team is going to sit from with you, and they're going to review the code one by line, and then you have to explain the purpose of each line of the code over there. So definitely, if someone reviews, he will tell you that why there's no reason to put this particular line of code over here. So in every good company, it's a process, and they do it very like religiously, and that that's a part of the procedure to keep the quality maintained. So once we are out of this if block, The else never runs for the first time. We are coming to the line where we are going to set this visit count value 1 to the session object. So we are keep on inserting everything to the session object. So we have inserted this to the session object. If you want to see, you can just go to the attribute and you see the visit count is equal to 1. This has appeared over here, right? And then we are moving further. Now, this is the typical case. We are going to generate the response in the form of HTML page. So we are setting up the content /HTML. So this response type is set. Then we are getting the print writer, the instance of the print writer in the form of variable out. And then this is everything I have created just to demonstrate that we are creating a complete new HTML page with lots of information, with the information like title that contains welcome to my page, my website in the first iteration. In the next iteration, it will contain welcome back to my website. So as of now, it is containing welcome to my website. Then title, along with the title, we are printing within the body session dot get attribute username, that is Shah Alam. So it will say welcome to my website Shah Alam, that is username that we have set in the if block. And then we are getting the session ID that is printing in another as another data of the table. Okay. uh, then we are getting create time, and we are also basically putting the table has got two columns. In one column you can see in the table data we are putting the creation time as a string information depicting the information, and the next column we are actually printing the create time, the creation time, and the create time is a variable which is holding the create time that we have just inserted into the session object. The last access time, similarly the time of the last access, and that will be followed by in the next table data, that is the next column as last access time. The last access time will be printed. Then visit count, which is 1 as of now, that will be printed. The first name Shah or S that we have inserted will be printed. Last name A, that will be printed. And then this input type submit value is equal to review session data information. This will be generated. The form is closed, the body is closed. So basically we are going to generate this whole form, and let me go through it. So this form is being populated and is sent back to the response. And once we are done, you can see the control. You can see the URL has now in fact started showing that the hit was to the hello form. So, and the information that you had sent was S and A as the first underscore name and the last underscore name, and the response that you have received from the site is or from the servlet is from the servlet which is hello form is rather the servlet which has the URL pattern as hello form. Here we have got the same name being used as the name of the class and as well as the URL pattern. And I told you this is not a good practice. We must change it to a different name. So we have a whole class dedicated for it in the past. You can refer that class. So welcome to my website S space A and session information ID. You see the same session ID 6BBE is being printed over here. The creation time that we have seen in the last time, both being the same, are printed over here. Number of visits is equal to 1. First name is equal to S and the last name is equal to A. Review session data and information. Let me press this button. Then what happens, the controls comes back to the same servlet hello form.java, you see. And as the control comes to the doGet method, the same line of information is being executed. Now request.get session, it is not going to give me a blank new session object. Rather, it is going to give me the already pre-populated session object of the type HTTP session class, which I have created in the first hit. When we have traversed from the form, the index.html to this servlet for the first time, because this request which is coming from the client, from the browser, after pressing this button review session data and information, this client or the browser is also sending the session ID, this session ID back to the server. Now in that case, the get session method of the request is going to fetch that session ID from the request, and it is basically going to map it with the actual session object or the instance of HTTP session class, which is created and stored in the memory and referred by the Tomcat container, and it is going to get back that session object which is pre-populated, and uh, uh, we will get that session in fact. So we proceed further. You see the session object that we have got this time. If you want to see, it's already a pre-populated session. You can see all the values are available over here for right from the beginning. You can see the creation time is there. In fact, the session ID is there, and is new is false this time. See, is new is false this time. That means the variable is new is false. That means if I call session.isNew method, this is going to refer to this particular variable of session, and the false value is going to return. And then you see I am looking for the attributes. Where are the attributes? Attributes, yeah, here. So you can see the attributes are already populated. Visit count is equal to 1, as we have set in the earlier case. Now I need to increment it and put it back as a visit count is equal to 2, because this information I need to set it back to the server that this is the second visit. Username is as we have populated as a concatenated value of the first name and the last name. This is there. The last name is there and the first name is there. Now let's proceed further. Fn plus F6. We are getting the last access time. In fact, these two values could also be the last access time and the creation time. These two values could also be put inside the session dot is new, because we can convert them for only once, and then we can populate them into the session object, so that every time we do not need to create a new object, and then we can keep on accessing from the session object itself. We can do that. Anyways, I have not done that, but that's the better way to do it. So let's move further. I'm getting it back from the session object itself, and then as the pre-populated value, and then converting it back to the date format. First name is null, last name is null. They are null because they are just the variable, the method local variables, and then I will need to populate them from getting the pre-saved value of the session object that we will do soon. Then title is welcome back to my website, and unnecessarily we are generating this integer value as 1, which we have already saved into session, and we are not going to use this one value. Rather, we will be picking up the value which has stored in the session, and we will increment over that value only. So as I suggested, this could be moved to the if block to save this unnecessary creation of an integer object. String visit count is equal to new string visit count, and then if session is new. Now this must return me false, and this if block must not, execute. So the control must go to the S block. You see, the control has come to the S block, and it will keep on coming to the S block every time we press review session data and information. It will not go to the if block again, because session is not new unless and until it is basically destroyed for any reason, for whether through the log of clicking the log of link that we have seen, and there we have done something to destroy it, and then we move further. Now you see in the S block we have already saved the first name and the last name values. So with the key value as first underscore name and the last underscore name, and the combination of the first and the last name as user name. So we are going to call the get attribute method to fetch them back from the session object this time. Okay, so we are getting those values, and as you can see, if you want to see, they were null earlier here, first name and the last name, and but after this you can see the value has been populated to S, and the value has been populated to A. So you can directly see from here also by hovering the mouse pointer to the name of the variable. Okay, and as of now the visit count was showing the previous value. It is showing the previous value, that is 1. As soon as we move further, we execute this line of the code, we get the visit count as 1. Okay, and then here we are incrementing the visit count value to 2. Now the visit count has changed to +1, that is 2, And then because this new value has to be set back to the session, so we are calling the set attribute method of the session object, and we are changing its value to this new value of visit count, which is 2. Okay. So, and this visit count key is just basically a name, a string format visit count, that is this one. So basically we can use this to get it back the next time by providing it the same over here, this visit count. So fn plus f6, and then again we are generating the same, uh, uh, the code, and you see the title. The title is now welcome back to my website, because the title was in the first attempt it was changed over here in the if block, and now we have not entered the if block, so the title will remain the same, welcome back to my website. And uh, this whole thing is moved here, and we are moving step by step. So session information, this will be printed as a header in the center with h2 value, and that is much bolder than other information. And then we proceed further, session dot get id, and we will get the same session id whatever we were shown in the first attempt. And similarly, the creation time, the last access time, these values are going to remain the same. Number of visit count is of course going to change, because the visit count value has, the variable value has changed to 2. So the first name, the last name, and then the rest of the things, the log of hyperlink is over here, this that you are seeing in one of the table data, and then in the next table data you are seeing the submit button. So both are being generated, this whole form is being generated, and you can see the control comes back. And okay, just hold on. So okay. Control comes back, and you see the number of visits has changed to 2. Okay, the session id is same. Till now the creation time and the last time is same, because the creation time was created for the first hit, and the last access time will mean any logical value in the second hit, when it will refer the time of the first hit as the last access time, because at that time you have tried to save anything into the session value, or retrieve anything from the session value, or rather use the session value as a whole. So for these two hits, number of is 2, these two values are going to remain the same. Then I press review the session data and information, and you see again the controls comes over here. We are going to proceed as usual, and you can see if session is new is going to turn false, and I will move to the S block. Control is going to move to the S block, and whatever happened in the previous cycle, the same thing will happen again over and over for rest of the time. And you can see page being generated. The visit count in this case is 3, and keep on moving further, and you can see the number of visits is 3. It has changed. uh, See here, uh, creation time, as you can see, is now different from the time of last assist. So this time is showing the last time is being shown as the time uh, you know uh, at the time when we try to access the session object in the previous hit. So that is now being shown, and rest of the information is same. The session id is same, that is ending with 6 BBE, uh, and so on. It will keep on happening. Okay, so you can see the hit is different. Now let me do one thing, just to test. I am copying this URL, right? I'm copying this URL. The hit is 4, number of visits is 4, the session ID ends with 6 BBE. This is the execution time and the last access time. These are the information that has been submitted from the form in the first hit, and then they will be stored in the session. And now I'm using the same URL to hit directly to the servlet that I'm expecting to give me this particular information from another browser, say for example Edge this time. I'm going here, I'm going to paste it over here. Now this browser is a different client. It's not the same client what the browser that is running within the ID that that browser is. They both are treated as a different client. So when I say this, what happens is basically okay. It because it's in the debug mode. You see what is happening over here. Fn plus F6. I am going to move further, and you can see if session is new. What is happening over here? It has entered into the if block. That means for that particular client, a new session has been created. And when a new session has been created, a new session ID has been assigned. Creation time is also new, and the time of last access is also same as the creation time. That will be also a new thing. Now, what will happen here? It has not come from the control has not come from index.html file, because that contains the parameter first underscore name and the last underscore name that you have supplied in the form. Now what happens over here? F8 plus F6, you know, the first name and the last name, you see their values, they are still null. They are still null. So because you have not attempted to come from the index.html, and it is being treated as a purely a new client, a new session ID is generated, the form values are missing, and so when you complete this code, the document has been generated, and you see the output, what has happened over there. Go ahead and show you the output, what has come. You can see the session ID is a different value, that is 771E. The creation time is different. The number of visits is 1. Of course, because you have not navigated from the first name from the index.html file, which contains the first name and the last name value that you have supplied. So these values are not being able to fetch from a request.get parameter function calls. So you get a null value that remains null, and every time you keep on doing this. Okay, so because I'm in a debug mode, so every time it will keep me stucking over here. So let me just move ahead, and value has changed from 1 to 2 to 3 and so on. It will keep on moving. So as soon as I press the log off button, so let me say this log off link, hyperlink, you know, thank you for visiting, you are logged off. And because the username and the first name and the last name were null, so the combination of their value, that is also null. I'm going to paste the earlier URL for the hello form again to see what is happening over here. So the control comes here. Let me say Fn plus F7. Move ahead. You can see now this time, because the session, when I say log off, that session has expired, and you can see that this is the third time that the new session ID that you are seeing. This is not the same session ID. The visit count is 1. Of course, these values are going to be null. The first name and last name is going to be null. The same will happen if you do it from here in the ID, that is from this page till now it has shown 4, and let me say copy this URL, and say log off. Okay, so thank you for visiting, your log off s space a, and then let me go back and try to refresh it. It has come to the hello form.java, and here we will have when we proceed further, we will have if session is true, and the control will come to the if block, because we have logged off and that session is gone. So when that session is gone, you have complete new session created for that uh, that communication, and you see uh, 3461, this is the new session ID. the number of is equal to 1. The first name and last name remains null. Okay. Let me uh, end this debug and come to the normal modes. Let me just terminate it and come to the Java JE perspective back. And if I choose to hit this page from index.html, for this browser there is already this session ID has generated. Let's see what is happening then. And we are going to the index.html page. Oh, top cut is stopped. Something has happened and the top cut is stopped. Anyways, so you can keep on experimenting different situations with different browsers at a time, and you can see how it functions. So this is all about session management using HTTP session object. I hope the code is clear by now. Is it okay, guys? Ahmed Faraz is saying yes. The constructor integer int is deprecated. Yes, it is deprecated. And yeah, logout.java. Yes, I need to tell you this. Just hold on. You have pointed the right thing. So I will show you the logout.java. First, let me answer about your query that constructor integer int is deprecated. You are right over here. This constructor, where it is, this one. This one is deprecated actually, and uh, basically you should either use simply the boxing facility to use this line, or you can basically uh, control that. If you just go to the APIs, it will itself tell what should be used. You can go to it, and because I'm using a very old version which has not deprecated, so it is not showing a deprecation here. Otherwise, probably I'm using Java 7 or something. Yeah, Java 7, I believe. Uh, Java 7 or Java 8. So this was, I think, not deprecated till that point. If you use any other newer versions of the Java, then you will actually, in the ID itself, you will see that this particular call is striked out by a line, a black line, and that indicates a deprecation. And in that case, it will tell you, when you go to the code, it will tell you what other code that you should use in the case of deprecation. That means this particular constructor is no longer a suggested thing to be used. There is something better against it, so they will give you the particular method that you should basically use in that case. So that must be within the integer itself, the integer class. Let me just try to figure that out. Uh, but value of, you should use this value of, if you are passing a value of in the form of integer or a string, whatever you are passing. So you should basically use either of the two values. So let me say I'm passing in the form of a string, so I can say this simply a string one. So you should use value of instead of mm, the integer constructor for it being the deprecated value. No, the logout functionality. You can see this is a logout.java. and that hyperlink basically that was being generated uh, in basically the helloform.java class for this log off. If you have a look at it, uh, anchor hyperlink refresh log off, and the value is log off, that is log off is reprinted, and href is pointing to log off, it is the url pattern directly given over here. So that means the hit will go to looking for the URL pattern log off, and if because I have generated the servlet automatically, it's the same as the name of the class file. So it will go to the logout.java file, and you can see this file what it does. By default, the HTML have get as a method which is default, so it will come the control will come to the do get method, and you can see it says string thank you for visiting, you are logged off. Session.get attribute username. So session object is being shared between the hello form, which is another component, and logoff.java, which is another component. So these are two subnets. So basically session is being shared across the whole application, because one component could navigate to the other component, and you could keep on navigating to different components, different dynamic components, whether they are sublet, whether they are JSP or whatever. So the session object will be the same for all of them, for one user, for one client, per client. So you are using that session object to get the attribute username that you are printing as a label. Thank you for visiting. You are logged off s underscore a or shah underscore alam, shah space alam. And then this is the single method that you call session dot invalidate, and this method basically invalidates the session. It kills your session, and your session ID is gone. Okay, so when even though if the browser sends the same session ID again to hit the sublet is not going to get the session, because request.get session is not going to figure out a session object for that particular session, because that is gone, that is invalidated rather by the Tomcat itself. So this is the functionality, the single line that is being used in the log of functionality. That's it. Um, Rest of the information that is being retrieved when reopen the site at a time is either in the form of cookies, or that information is saved in the database. So what is being invalidated, or what is being lost, is purely in the memory, which is being stored temporarily, not on the file system, but in the memory on the server side, in the session object of the type class HTTP session. And then you basically create a HTML file that says visit again, and then you have the title visit again. Thank you for I mean head. It is the title that is being shown over in the you know browser bar, and then you print the title, and that's it. So that's all about this code. Okay, so clear till now? Or any doubts? Okay. So another thing about the session is that the session timeout that you see that is some value that basically decide for how long a session will remain active in the memory if there is no communication from the client side. So that session timeout is some value which could be specified within the code as well. Like for example, when you create a session object right over here, you create a session object right over here for the first time, when the control comes for the first time, then what you can say is session dot set uh, max inactive interval. So this is basically the timeout. If you specify this particular value, maybe in milliseconds, so this is going to take the control, and the session is going to and this is very much specific about the session of the particular client. That is this session object that has been referred by the session variable for that particular client. This will be very much specific for this particular client only, and this is done from within the code. You can pass some value, say for example 1000 milliseconds. You can pass some value, and after this time passes and there is no communication from the client side, that means the max inactive interval from the client and the server communication that exceeds to this particular time that we have set, then the session is automatically invalidated. You don't have to call the session.invalidate method. That will be called by the container and that will be invalidated. So this is the way how you set session timeout from within the code. But normally this is not done for individual session objects from within the code, but rather it is done from outside the code declaratively. That is in the web.xml file. In the web.xml file, for all session objects, for all clients, just one value. So that's a universal, like a universal law, that whatever session that you are going to create for any client, that is going to last for example for 5 minutes, okay, about 2 minutes, if there is no interaction between the client and the server. So if you want to see that, let me just show you. I'm going to Google that, in fact, to figure out uh, session time out in web.xml. This is how you figure out uh, how we are going to, basically do the session timeout, how we can configure the session timeout in servlet. So you see, within the web app, you have got session config element. That is, you are configuring information about the session. You are providing information about the session, and then session timeout tag is there. It says 20, and it's this value is in minutes. This value is in minutes, and it's also giving the example timeout with set max inactive interval that we have just seen, and that's in seconds, not in milliseconds, but in seconds. That's my bad. So that's in milliseconds. That's in seconds, not in milliseconds. Okay. So if I want to put the session configure, what I will do is I will just copy this bit of the code, and I will go to my web application. Uh, Inside the web.inf folder, web.xml file is there, and just write after the welcome file list in the same hierarchy uh, inside the web app tag. I will paste this session config, and session timeout, say, let me say it's 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes. If I give this and if I save it, I will have to restart the application because I have made the changes to the text file, and that will be reloaded. Either I refresh the application or I restart the server. So I will have to restart. So you can try doing this in your code, in your web.xml as an assignment, and from the code itself, using the set max inactive interval method of the session object to make the timeout as an assignment. And you have to wait for, actually, for, if I said for 2 minutes, you have to wait for 2 minutes, and then you have to try to hit after 2 minutes to see that whether it says the session is timeout or not. So only then you will get the message of the timeout. Okay, guys. I hope this is all about session, and if you have any doubts, let me know. Let me post this link as well to you. See, okay, so keep trying and keep submitting the assignment. As I told you earlier, that uh, you can send me the mail with the mail number at the end of the subject line by mail number 123 in the format that I have prescribed in the assignment video. So you can send me any mails as you like, but keep those assignments in one particular, keep adding them to one particular Word file, and then finally you have to submit that as one Word file as a lab assignment. Um, that I will consider for both the purpose, for lab evaluation as well as your assignments. So I will part them into two parts. The assignment that I keep on giving, that will be taken as a theory class assignment, and the rest as a lab assignment. So I will try to assess them. So when you send that particular file at last, even though if you have said into parts, send me that particular file, and the subject line, instead of saying mail number 3, 4, or 5, you have to send me mail number. Instead of that, you have to send me with the message final. You have to write final over there. ठीक है? So that I must be able to track whenever I try to search in my mail final, I should be in a position to say all the people who have sent the final mail. So this is how I'm going to, figure out your assignments and assess you guys, uh, unless and until there is any other instruction from the competent authorities regarding the revolution. So that's all. So we can just find out for today's class. What about the tomorrow's class? Shall we keep it at 4 o'clock in the evening like today? Okay, so tomorrow class is going to be at 4 o'clock, just like today, and tomorrow is probably going to be the last class, and I will tell you the rest of the videos that because we have to finish the syllabus in this week only. Uh, uh, for EJB, I will give you some notes, some very concise notes, the last unit that you have to go through, and that will be beneficial to you because that will be very limited in content, and you have to just go through that notes. That will be sufficient for you. So uh, if in case after the tomorrow's class, uh, uh, we will have another session regarding the discussion of how and where you can find out the whole syllabus, and I will tell you everything about it. uh, uh, then you can, what you can do is, if you have any doubts in any of the lectures, or you're not able to understand anything, not one or two people, but rather a majority of the people, first you are trying to coordinate among yourself, try to understand within yourself. Then we can have some review classes as the time permits, and as the instructions we get from the administration. So we can have some extra sessions to revise if anything is not understood properly. Okay. Is that fine, guys? Okay, so you can log off. Thank you very much.